What are your worst college roommate horror stories? NSFW. Freshman year college had bunks. Drunk roommate comes home before me. He sleeps on top. He drank too much. He wet the bed out like an open fire hydrant apparently. I came home later and sat down in a flash flood puddle on mine soaked to the core. Needless to say I threw it in the shower and told him to get me a new one. Edit. Apparently this is not that uncommon dart and the magic pea theory still holds up. My roommate was a born-again Christian who did not allow alcohol or women in the room. If he saw alcohol he would go to the floor manager and demand a room check since we were not allowed on campus. The floor manager would come in and ask, "Do you have alcohol?" and I would reply no. The floor manager would try to leave and the roommate would burst in from the hallway and say yes, he does, but would not find it. I hid it in his closet every time. He never figured that part out. Literally the same process would happen with women in the dorm after 11 PM. Same 2-act play. Same hiding place. He would always scream about the women when they came in. "My mama didn't raise me to shack up with no woman," was his favorite phrase. I asked more and more women to come in and stay until exactly 10 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds PM every night. Eventually he dropped out of college from the stress. I guess I am the monster. Itch didn't pay rent for 3 months and we didn't know until after our lease was up. Was just resolved 6 months ago and graduated 2 years ago. Will never sign a joint lease again. I had a university flatmate who was a bit crazy. It started out with her just stealing my food. I couldn't leave anything in the kitchen for more than 12 hours or she'd have it, and putting passive aggressive notes up in our kitchen calling me a liar. I have food allergies but apparently I was making them up. She was nasty to anyone I had over. She took all my crockery and put it on top of the cupboard so I couldn't reach it and I had to climb up and get it all down. She then convinced all of the guys in my flat to take the kitchen furniture and pile it outside my door so I couldn't get out of my room. I got the flu. She spent a day screaming at me through the wall whilst I alternately cried and slept until my parents came and drove me home. It got to the point where I was considering dropping out of university, but I asked to be put in another flat as a last resort. I got moved into a flat with 5 guys and it was so much messier but so much nicer. Edit. Some people are suggesting that I did something to make her this crazy. I didn't do anything. That's why her behavior was just not understandable in any way. I had my own friends. I kept the kitchen tidy when I used it. I didn't make noise late at night. Whatever. She was just looking for a punching bag. My roommate once invited a girl that was kicked out of her house to stay with us. Keep in mind our dorm room was barely larger than a prison cell. I listened to them duck on the bottom bunk more times than I care to remember. I had a roommate who was racist and obsessed with World War II Nazi. Thought it was just in a History Channel kind of way. He chose to read Mein Kampf for a class. Then he started writing juvenile bathroom graffiti in German in the stalls. He became upset when he found out I dated a black girl in high school. Then the swastikas started showing up graffiti in the dorm elevator, along with Engers drawn in a noose. He had a knife collection. He seriously came back after the first week with an end table, folding lounge chair, and an easy chair, despite the fact that the room had no real extra space for any of it. He smelled and tried to get rid of the room smell with a whole can of peach renouset one day. He left food garbage in his trash, left for the weekend, and when I emptied it because it was smelling, got mad at me for touching his stuff. Said he'd take care of me if I did it again. He said he hated kids. He was a special ed major. I asked why he majored in that if he hated kids. He said there are 52 special ed majors in this school and I am one of only 2 guys. Moved out the start of next semester, as soon as they'd let me. Paid the extra money for a single the next year. Edit. Looked him up. Found a picture of himself in blackface and some creepy black and white photos. Edit II. No, there is nothing wrong with reading Mein Kampf, having a knife collection, or not liking kids none of themselves. Context. People. Context. Previously posted a last time around. Here. My roommate was this geeky 400-pound guy who watched Sailor Moon in the original Japanese. He had a tiny red-headed girlfriend who regularly beat the it out of him in daily life, and he let her, on like 6 PM on a Thursday. He suddenly asks me if I can vacate the dorm room until 11. as they're going to have some romantic time. I was a little pissed he gave me no warning, but left anyways. Get back at midnight and walk into a scene of her in black vinyl bondage gear with a riding crop and a taxi driver's hat, riding him, with him covered in welts from head to toe. Nope, the hell right out of there. I had a housemate, 4-person house, who I asked to take care of my dog over one weekend. Never left any of the responsibilities associated with my dog up to anyone else because the rest of the guys were doing me a favor by letting me have him there anyways. This one housemate wasn't a huge fan of the dog, and when I came home after the weekend, there was it and piss in my room where presumably my dog was kept most of the weekend. His food and water were in there too. So I guess that's something. He was really skittish when I went to say hi to him, so I think my housemate hit or kicked him while I was gone. My first roommate. Oh, the memories. Very heavy. Very socially awkward and definitely psychotic. Often mumbled to himself with shifty eyes. Ate my food. And was either railing against the evils of religion out trying to get me to join the Army of the Virgin or some other Catholic sect. He often lounged around in his tighty whities and refused to clothe himself if I had guests or girls over. He would just sit down and put a blanket over his lap. I walked in on him jacking it or blaring porn a number of times, with which he used my tissues. He would also have long phone arguments with his girlfriend, who according to the wallet photo he had of her, was Greedly from Captain Planet. The kicker for me was when he had a breakdown and called the RA and a counselor in to talk with him while I was writing a paper. He is highly agitated and at one point said I just looked over at Devon Juices while he was asleep and thought to myself I should just take out my knife and kill him then myself. No offense Devon Juices. I was in the zone with the paper so I automatically replied none taken, then did a double take as the horror dawned on me. Nonplussed eye contact with my RA. Nope, the duck out and moved to a different floor. This will probably be buried but hopefully someone can benefit from my past misery. I've never resided in a college dorm, but I just want to share that once I was in a Skype call with my good friend, who does reside in a dorm, who left his mic on when he left for an extended period of time, allowing me and the other 2 people in our call to hear all his roommates, like 5 other dudes, arguing about who ate the last Pop-Tart. It got pretty intense. Is this what dorm life is like? My girlfriend lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with her friend. Both I and the roommate's boyfriends lived there. The girls were getting upset at each other and things had been going south. Then one day near the end of a Walking Dead episode we started talking about problems and talking turned to fighting. Things were said and he pulled a gun on me. I asked why he would do that and if I had been threatening him by yelling while sitting on the couch. He never pointed it at me but he did clock it. My GF pulled me into her bedroom where I called the police. When they got there we had already gone outside with him alone in the other bedroom. When the police entered there was a single gunshot and he ended his life. We left that apartment and never went back except to move out. This is the reason why I don't watch Walking Dead anymore. His GF said he had been feeling suicidal for months. This is why you get help. Help just means telling people. Talk about it. I thought it was just for attention when the GF said he was going to kill himself. It wasn't. It sucks knowing you could have done things differently, and sucks more not knowing if it would have made things better or worse. I have accepted it wasn't my fault. I have moved on. But man do I wish he would have mentioned it at some point. Even as a half joke so I would know it might be true and could help. Serious. This happened to my cousin. I was there to witness the aftermath. My cousin is an international college student who had just moved here and barely spoke any English. He moved in with another roommate to offset the ridiculous cost of a NY apartment. His roommate met a pretty cute girl. However, he discussed it with my cousin and agreed that there was something odd about the girl. He didn't want to fully commit to a relationship just yet, but they still hooked up. My cousin also said that his roommate still talked to other girls, but didn't move farther than that. One day my cousin and his roommate were having breakfast in the kitchen. The girl had slept over the night before. The girl wakes up and goes into the kitchen and picks up a knife and stabs his roommate in the neck 3 times. My cousin freezes in shock but then picks up his chair and tried to fend her away. She then takes the knife and stabs herself in the chest. Everyone survives. My cousin cried and called my dad telling him he hates America and wants to go back to China. Sharon used to eat in her room and then slide the plate under her bed. She'd do this every day until my other roommate and I couldn't bear the stink anymore and needed plates for our own dinner. She also regularly invited her drug dealer boyfriend over to hang out in our app during the day. Several times I came home to find deals taking place in our living room. Eventually the cops were called by one of our neighbors and we, not him, were interrogated and searched. Oh, and there's the time she left a sanitary towel sunny side up on the toilet seat in our shared bathroom. I could go on. One of my roommates was accused of raping the other during a night of drunken escapades. Freshman year I got bunked up with an extra roommate due to over-enrollment. Cramped dorm room with 3 guys in it. For a while things were pretty fun and we were all friends. But after about 2 months one roommate had a few disgusting habits. First, he instead of walking literally across the hallway to the bathroom, he would pee in empty or half-empty Gatorade bottles and just let them sit in the open. That was gross. But then he started eating in takeout boxes and letting them sit all night or day until me and other roommate got back to yell at him. The third thing is he had a shoebox collection of used condoms be masturbated into. The smell was so horrendous and awful. It took the RA and whoever else in charge of housing a month to finally relocate me and the other guy and eventually kick the gross dude out. So for nearly an entire semester at any time you could walk into our room and see it in a container with leftovers still in it, a mosaic of different colored piss bottles, or a soggy shoebox on his desk filled with used condoms. He never went to class and would play video games on his computer until 5 AM every day. I still think back on it nearly 10 years ago and am blown away with how long it took for any administrative intervention to happen. I am in college and my roommate currently likes to jerk off and leave his used cum issues all over the floor. I have told him to clean up after himself a million times. No flushing or throwing them away. Grosses me out so bad and I never bring my girlfriend to my house because of it. I had a roommate that would mix booze and pills. One night she fell asleep with her vibrator doing its thing. She woke up when the batteries ran out. At least she had some fun dreams. Dude shaved his chest hair in the kitchen. Also, had a super loud Asian girlfriend who screamed during sex, even when we had people over. My freshman roommate was an okay guy but we didn't really have a ton in common. I think the housing department matched us up simply because we both liked ska. The dude seemed rather asexual. He had friends but never had guests and I couldn't tell if he was gay or straight or what. Keep in mind that in those days even in the most enlightened circles some people tried to stay in the closet. Now one of the things I regret most about college was drinking to excess. And I'd get blotto, where I remembered very little about the night before. One night I was way too hammered. Don't even remember how I got back to my room. But I woke up around 4 AM to the oddest dream. Which was that while I was passed out, my roommate came over to my bed, took off his pants, and climbed on top of me. In the dream I woke up while he was pulling down my pants and I rolled over and with one solid push shoved him across the room where he crashed into his bed in his tighty whities. I was a lot bigger and stronger than him and sent him flying. I can still see the image of him hitting his bed like it was yesterday. I went back to being passed out and later woke up remembering that weird ass dream. My roommate was gone, but later that day I saw him and he had a swollen lip. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt so I'm not going to say for sure what happened. But a couple of weeks later one of the dudes next door asked me if I wanted to swap roommates and move into his room. And I said yes in a flash. TL. Doctor, I think my roommate tried to abuse me while I was passed out drunk. But I'm not 100% sure. Full stop. She got mad when I moved her clothes to the dryer after they'd been sitting in the washer for a day and a half. Late to the game, but here it goes. My favorite roommate story is from freshman year. My roommate came home drunk one night and wandered into the dorm basement. She was too drunk to find a bathroom, so she peed in the dryer, not the washing machine. The dryer. I'm half horrified, half impressed, given the fact it was a front loader, and in an incredible twist of fate, the next day she forgot her clothes in the washing machine. Some kind gentleman paid to put them in the dryer for her, and it just so happened that it was the one she peed in the night before. I lived in a suite with 3 other girls. 2 of the girls awesome. The third can go duck herself. She was nuts. She would break into my room and dispose of anything that was against the rules. My lighter, trash, candles, even though I had a ducking candle warmer, trash. I bought a box of condoms for all the girls and placed it in the bathroom cabinet. She had a ducking hissy fit saying it was gross. I ended up having to put them somewhere out of her view. If I had a boy over, she would purposely interrupt us so we weren't doing anything while she was in the dorm. She once came home sobbing and screaming that she got fingered and had to go get a pregnancy test. My suitemates had to sit her down and explain that she couldn't get pregnant that way. The last straw was when I woke up to her screaming at my sweet, shy suitemate because she left her hairbrush on the counter. That itch made her cry. I went to NRA and we had a sit down with everyone. She would admit to nothing. I asked to move rooms and was denied. I just ignored her and went home every chance I got until school was over. I visited an old friend there a bit ago and ran into that itch. She gained 50 pounds and was sobbing her eyes out on the stairs. I lolled. Edit. I have more stories, but I didn't want to make this too long. Also, sorry for any grammar issues, misspellings. My freshman roommate installed a sliding bolt lock on the door to our shared dorm room so that I couldn't enter while he was in bed with girls he brought in, which was so random I could never tell when he'd be using the room. The worst part was when I'd get back very late, wanting to get in the room and go to sleep, and he'd have me locked out in the hallway, especially when I had an early class. Even when I waited patiently in the hall, he refused to unlock the door, until one night I knocked harder, and he threw a glass full of ice water in my face as he finally opened it. I had two roommates, one who I'm still with best friends today and the other who is the subject of this story. He was black and a straight up ignorant asshole. He would always play the race card and then talk about how he and his homies would shoot their guns at the police in high school. So yeah, typical douche. But this story focuses on his violent domestic abuse to his girlfriend. Now don't get me wrong, his girlfriend was just an idiot for dating an arsehole like him. Anyways, one night me and the other roommate heard yelling and screaming from the dorm lounge that was next door. All of a sudden I hear, "Stop hitting me. Stop hitting." As it turns out, this arsehole punches his GF in the face more than once. I'll never forget that screaming. The next day me and the other roommate went to the housing agency at the university and told them what happened. And they did absolutely nothing. Eventually they broke up. And now that asshole is a lawyer. Only in America. My roommate and his girlfriend's anniversary happened to be on Valentine's Day. On the morning of, I awoke to smell of chocolate fondue and noticed him making chocolate dipped strawberries. I commented on how nice he was for doing so. To which he replied, "Yeah, and if she's lucky she'll get a chocolate dipped after." Now I thought he was joking. But later that night I heard a scream. Not out of the ordinary if you knew physics life. But that's another story. Followed by the door slamming. I went on with my night and figured it was not a big deal. The next morning I saw him in our kitchen and he apologized for the scream. He, being naive, asked what happened. His actual response: "I wanted to give her dessert, so I poured the fondue right onto my cock." He then had rushed to the hospital to get his burns treated. I could never look at him or chocolate fondue the same. TLDR, pouring hot chocolate fondue on your D burns and makes your roommate never want it again. Edit. My first Reddit gold is for chocolate fondue on my roommate's D. How wonderful. Thanks, Anonymous. Not really a roommate, but the kid who lived in the room next to me left his LimeWire public. Myself as well as a couple other kids on my floor discovered that he downloaded child porn. We reported him to our pretty soon afterwards and he got arrested, I think the next day. If he left it public. Did you ever wonder if someone else downloaded it as a joke or something? That's why we didn't report it immediately. We figured at some point he would have noticed and deleted it. That didn't happen. So we reported him. My second year of school I went to an out-of-state school. And I had to get an apartment because there was no room in on-campus housing for transfer students. My school provided those of us with a list of other students in the same situation, so that we might get together and go in on a place to live. So, I ended up doing just that with my roommate. Things were great for like 2 years. Then he started going downhill. His grades were slipping. His girlfriend dumped him. And he didn't make the golf team. Poor guy. About this time, he also stopped contributing around the apartment, like cleaning dishes. taking out the trash, buying toilet paper, etc. I finally decided to keep my own toilet paper stashed in my room in a locked cabinet. Days went by, and no toilet paper showed up in the bathroom. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into a little over a month. One day, my girlfriend was over and she had to go to the bathroom. She finished up, washed her hands, and then went to dry her hands on the towel hanging over the toilet when I heard her freak out. The underside of the towel was covered in its stains. My roommate had been wiping his ass with a towel above the toilet and hanging it back up. I have no idea how I never could smell it. I ended up throwing the towel on his bed and leaving him a roll of toilet paper with a note that said, "I think you need this more than I do." We never spoke again after that, and then our lease was up soon after and we parted ways. I lived in a house with 6 other sophomore guys in college. It was a hellhole. A few highlights. My roommate shaved his pubes and hair chest all over the toilet and left his winter coat all over the floor toilet. A different roommate was a drug dealer and a dozen frat guys showed up to straighten him out on a Tuesday night after he stole one of the frat brothers' laptops. The pube roommate poured bacon grease into a recently unclogged sink and it stayed clogged and turned into a swamp over the course of a month. The pube roommate forgot his keys one night and punched out a window to get into the house. We all thought it was a crime scene the next morning. The pube roommate ate the last of another roommate's birthday cake. What a D. When I was a freshman, my roommate basically had his girlfriend, whose own room was on our floor, move into our small dorm. They were banging all the time for 4 solid months. I'm waking up, ducking, going to sleep, ducking, got back from class, ducking. It was completely out of hand. It was every day at least 5 times for months. There were empty bulk condom boxes everywhere on his side. I basically couldn't be in my room. One day, I just wanted to come home from a long day, sit down and play Mortal Kombat with friends in my room. But you guessed it, that itch was locked. I went to our lounge, dejected, and told my friends I really just want to walk in there, sit down, and play just to spite them. One friend looked up at me and said, "Why don't you?" I was shocked. Then I nodded and said, "Yeah, why don't I? Let's go, boys." So without even knocking, 12 people followed me as I unlocked the door, walked in, refused to acknowledge them, turned on my Xbox, and we played for hours. They just sat there for a while dumbfounded. That's the same week I changed rooms. Next one wasn't too much better, but at least I could be in it. As a change of pace from the NSFW stories here, one of my roommates thought that the sprinkler head in his room would make a good place to leave a hanger for a couple of weeks. One night, it of course broke the red glass and released the floodgates in his room. We lived on the 2nd floor, so it flooded our apartment and the neighbors below. This was the weekend before finals week, of course. Best part was, when the firemen arrived, the hanger was still hanging on the sprinkler. Edit. Turns out this happens way too often. You'd think people getting higher education would be a wee bit smarter : I transferred into my final college halfway through my freshman year and ended up in the dorms with this kid whose old roommate moved out for better people. This kid was shy and very much a loner. He had one friend, girl who lived 2 stories up. They weren't dating, but they hung out constantly. One day, she got a boyfriend. He didn't like that. I arrived back at the dorm late that night and one of the guys on the floor called me in and told me that apparently he had hit her when he found out. Other sources say he threatened her with a knife. So I proceed cautiously into my room and he's in there talking on the phone, crying. I ended up going to bed, sleeping with the only weapon I had in the room, a pair of scissors. Didn't know if I might have to fight for my life in the middle of the night. A few days go by. I come home in the evening after class and walk in my room. He is talking on the phone, very calmly, but something feels weird. One of the resident directors knocks and asks him to come with her. One of the guys on the floor comes in and tells me that the cops had just showed up and were dealing with this kid. I ended up talking with his old lady interest later on and she told me that she had her horse stabled in the equestrian area. I didn't even know my school had this, and that this crazy kid had gone in there and disabled her horse with a knife. Cut him up so he couldn't walk again. My roommate was apparently kicked out and I had the room to myself for about 4 weeks until a new guy transferred in. Not a college roommate but RAF trade training. My roommate came back paralytic drunk, having already puked in the sink in the block shower room until it was full to the brim, only to then go on to have a nice long piss all over my TV and my shiny new Xbox 360. He was very apologetic and hungover, which was hilarious to watch in Fizz and Inspection Parade the next day, and cleaned it all up so I wasn't asked about the situation.